Okay. So just want to mention Curotech, another great sponsor, development shop, specializing in Laravel, Vue. So obviously you need any of those things, definitely check them out. And then they especially want me to emphasize again, they're hiring. So if you're looking for a new job, that is another place to look. Founder there also left a really cool video in Digital Swag. So check that out. Kind of give you a little more feel of the company. So yeah, so check them out in Digital Swag. Thanks a lot to Curotech. Appreciate it. Okay.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It looks like you just need to hit the video. There it is. Perfect.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. All right, I'm gonna let you get going here with the talk. I'm really excited for this one. This is kind of one near and dear to what I actually do when I'm not doing this. So really excited to hear the talk.
Awesome.
All right. I can see
Alrighty.
it. I can see the slides, so you're all set.
Awesome. Alrighty.
Okay.
Well, hi, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, everybody. My name is Allie, and today I'm going to be talking to you about writing delightful documentation. Just a little bit about me before I get started. I'm an experienced WordPress developer, designer, and educator. I currently own Bedia Productions, which is a boutique video editing, sound design, voiceover, and publishing studio for indie creators. And I have written docs for a handful of companies now, GiveWP, which is a WordPress plugin company, WP Buffs, which is a WordPress maintenance company. And I currently write and develop educational videos for companies like Automatic, Kinsta Hosting, and LinkedIn Learning. So today we are going to be talking about user documentation as opposed to technical documentation. So the public facing information like tutorials and guides that we give to our users and to our customers, rather than the docs that we might use internally or share, between developers. But I'm sure that a lot of what I'm about to say can apply to both. Learning is learning and teaching is teaching. So if you write either type of documentation or want to start writing either type of documentation, hopefully there's something in here for you. This is not a super slide heavy talk. Mostly here, the slides are mostly here for visual learners, no code or anything like that. So take a little bit of a break, get our minds into some soft skills here if you want. All right, let's dive in. All right, so using or self-teaching a new product or tool or software can be extremely difficult. I know this as someone who is basically 100% self-taught in everything that I do, as well as someone who's worked in the open source software world for quite a while. Documentation is the bridge to creating confident and self-sufficient customers and users, as opposed to frustrated ones. So by offering documentation that does more to frustrate somebody than to delight somebody, we break expectations, we lose trust, and at the end of the day, we lose customers and we lose users. And the only thing worse than not having documentation at all is having documentation that wastes people's time, that makes you look bad as a company or as a brand, or that frustrates already frustrated customers. And remember, chances are when somebody's coming to your docs, they are already frustrated, or at the very least, they're already somewhat confused. So that is why your docs not only need to educate, but to delight people, right? And to solve that kind of internal stress that they're feeling. No matter how clear or how simple your tool or service or software, whatever it is that you have out there, don't assume that people won't get stuck or appreciate help. So the main question you might be asking yourself right now is, who cares, right? Why are user docs so important? More so, why should they not just be good, but delightful? And why am I talking about user docs at a developer conference? Maybe you have a highly trained support team already. Maybe you have live chats on your site. Why should you bother with a static documentation library? Depending on your product, creating docs can be really time intensive. They can be really complicated. They can be really frustrating. And if you're watching this, you're probably a developer. Maybe you're not a writer, you're not a marketer. And so prioritizing a product or a project that depends on writing and marketing skills just it doesn't seem like something you're interested in, maybe not something you feel like you're going to be good at. But I'm here to tell you why you should care. Docs are helpful. They help people. They help your customers get up and running with your tool sooner rather than later. I'm sure a lot of us build things with software just for fun. But if you're here, you probably build things with software for money. So we prefer, right, people to be able to use the things that we build rather than give up when they get frustrated. People prefer to be able to do things themselves these days rather than wait for an email response or get on a call with you. They want to self-serve. And if they're using this thing sooner and they're happier, and that means your product works better, right? How many times have you heard, this thing doesn't work or this is broken when they really just haven't been using it properly? Having a full set of docs is way easier on your team. Maybe you already have a customer support team that you pay. And if your customers are already armed with basic knowledge, then that support team can help them build on that knowledge rather than spending all of their time handholding. I promise that if you have really strong docs, you won't be putting your support team out of business. We want to create the customers that we want, right? The best types of customers are going to be the confident ones, the ones who are well versed in your product and in its basics. Those are the people that you want in your support threads, who can have a thorough conversation about what it is that they are trying to do because they've already educated themselves to a degree, and maybe they've hit a wall and they need a real person to help them out. And when a customer is satisfied or even delighted with how easy it was to follow your docs and use your product, that is going to inherently build trust. They feel taken care of, they feel understood, and they're much, much more likely to stick around to continue, visiting your tool, visiting your site, and using your products. If you write software, if you've written a program, you should be able to teach it. If you understand something really well, like something you've built, you should be able to explain it. And that's really all that docs are. When you're writing docs, you're getting down to those minute, those ABCs that can help you to find flaws and potential improvements and possibilities for your software. So not only do docs help your users, but they can actually help you to improve upon your tool over time. So what goes into delightful documentation? How do you determine what information should go into your docs? This is the starting point. A lot of resources that you probably already have will help you to determine a skeleton or an outline for the docs that you should have. Remember that docs should not be written from what you assume people are going to want to know, but what you know about how people use your product. And I bet a lot of that info is already at your fingertips and you just have to go look for it. So we can find topics for docs in basically all the places where your customers tell you what they want out of the thing that you've built. So support tickets that your team responds to are full of the exact questions that your customers have, right? That's kind of the point. And the common places where they get stuck. So if we round up all of those common customer concerns, that can be a good starting place to start writing our docs. Check out the reviews that you get or the feedback that you get on your product, especially the negative ones, right? What are the concerns? What are the problems? Where are people hitting walls and getting frustrated? Check your website analytics tools, see what you can see from bounce rates. Does the customer search your site for a particular solution and then not find that thing and give up? This could be especially helpful if you already have docs and you want to improve upon those docs. Digging into those analytics can really help you find some good places to start. Good classic tactic, take a peek at what your competitors are providing in their docs and at least meet their topics, or else surpass them, provide what it is that they're missing, so that you can have even more robust docs. And when people are comparing two tools and they want to see, well, which one of these things is going to be easier for me to learn, you come out on top. And finally, if you're doing any SEO work at all, keyword tracking, anything like that, determine what kinds of questions people are asking that bring them to your site. What problems are they actually trying to solve with the thing that you distribute? What can you learn about them as people from that information? And after you review all of these channels, you should have a really good, strong idea of what kind of questions your docs need to answer. A lot of these ideas are going to require you to link up with your marketing team or link up with your support team. And that's good. That's the point. That's awesome. You need to get this information if you're going to be successful building these docs. Oops. Okay, so how do we actually go about sitting down and writing delightful documentation? Keyword here is write. Again, as I said before, we're a virtual room full of developers, and that probably means that a lot of you don't like writing. Tough. The key word here is to write. You don't have to be the next Charles Dickens. You don't have to, be a fantastic, amazing writer, but you do need to dedicate the time to write out what it is that you need to communicate. And you can always get someone to help you refine that information in the future, but you need to get it out of your head first. When you're writing that documentation, there are 4 main things that we need to keep in mind. Voice. And in writing, right, that means our tone, the way that we come across rather than, audio, the way that we sound. Your voice needs to be friendly. It needs to be helpful. It needs to be warm. It needs to be welcoming. We want to avoid using a ton of technical jargon, even if this is a technical tool. We need to keep in mind that there are people that might be coming to this, completely not knowing what we're talking about. Explaining things from the user point of view rather than from a developer point of view, which can be tricky. So for example, when I write scripts for video documentation as a part of what I do, when I make videos for docs or for walkthroughs or for tutorials, word choice is always massively, massively, massively important to me. And that's something that you should really give some thought to, because you know how the thing works. Now it's a matter of getting it out of your head and explaining it in the way that somebody else is going to need. When we're organizing our docs, we want to go from the simplest to the most complex. If you look at any set of documentation out there on the web, you're always going to see, or most of the time, you're going to see some sort of beginner's guide at the beginning or a getting started portion at the beginning. And then things get progressively more detailed and build upon each other until we have more advanced custom topics at the end of the documentation. That is a really good format to follow. We want to create relationships between the different docs by using that kind of timeline of when somebody sits down to use this thing, they start from the easy part and they get harder and harder and harder. We want to focus on goals. What are the goals that people are going to have using this thing? Is it getting set up? Is it creating a specific experience with your software? Is it editing or customizing? Is it using this thing for growth? Is it using it for maintenance? Keep those goals in mind. And then what I think is extremely important is visuals. As you're writing, bake in places for you to use imagery, screenshots, and video to accompany what it is that you're providing. So now that we have kind of an outline and we know what it is we need to focus on while writing, we need to determine what a delightful user journey through the docs is actually going to look like. So using your docs should not feel like scrounging or hunting for an answer. It should feel like requesting and receiving almost instantly. That boils down to how the information is found, right? Like how the user searches your docs to find what it is that they need to find to solve the problem. The user journey should go from point A, which is I'm stuck and probably really frustrated, to point B, which is I'm not stuck anymore and I feel better. And sometimes when it reaches that delightful territory, it should reach C, which is I'm not stuck, I feel great, and I found information that I didn't even know that I needed. So when we're determining this delightful user journey, we're going to go through 4 steps. Following that user process, going back from the beginning to advanced, right? Not everyone will have the same process though. Maybe the tool or software is pretty intuitive enough at the beginning, but maybe then there's a fork where once you get set up, you can build X with it or you can build Y with it. What options does your user have after getting started, and identify what those tracks look like? We want to make sure that we have a really, really strong search tools. Make sure that your docs can be accessed from any point in the process. The best way to accomplish this is a really good search box, search feature. If the user needs to visit your docs to answer one single problem, make sure that your docs are verbose enough and that you're using approachable enough language that searching works really well. People want to skim, right? That's the big thing on web pages. When we're looking for information, we want to be able to skim. So utilize things like tables of contents, but also subheadings and good nesting to make sure that sections within a doc can be found easily. And we mentioned this before, drawing relationships between the content, relationships between separate docs. So for example, we talked about before, if there's a fork in that process, we need that point A that could go to A1 or A2 to have a link in A that goes to both places, right? It feels self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised how many docs have individual pages that can be easily connected to create a journey, and they just don't connect them. And so you can't just publish this stuff and walk away. That's not the point. You have to study how your docs are performing, how people are using them or not using them, edit them, and update them as your product evolves. So where do you get that information? Study the site traffic on those docs pages. Which ones are visited the most? Which ones are visited a lot? Do people visit maybe one page and almost always end up searching then for something else that you can more easily direct them to? Which ones have really high or really low bounce rates that you can address? Incorporate a feedback area on your docs page, like an email form or an email address, a form, a live chat, even just one of those things I see a lot where at the bottom it just says, was this doc helpful to you? Yes or no? And they could choose a little thumbs up or thumbs down. This is going to give you a lot of information about which docs need to be revisited and which docs are already strong. You want to evaluate support tickets, right? How does your support team utilize their docs in educating users? Do people visit the docs before or after writing into your support team? Do you have support questions in your inbox that don't have docs that are good low-hanging fruit for you to go ahead and grab? So one big question, how do we actually get the users to use the docs? And that's a problem that I encountered a lot in the companies that I worked where I wrote documentation. Is okay, we have these great documents, these great pages, but people aren't visiting them. So what do? You can spend ages on beautiful documentation that nobody uses. The delightful part of the process includes getting the docs in front of the people when they need them. So what is that? 5 good ways to get your users to the docs easily and quickly. Incorporate the links to docs inside the software UI itself. So as an example, I mentioned working at GiveWP previously. If you download GiveWP and install it on a WordPress site, as you go through the settings pages and the dashboard pages, you will see links that go directly to the docs on the GiveWP website, so that if you're stuck setting up a donation page, you can hop over to that doc. You want to make sure that your docs are extremely easy to find on your website. So in your navigation, in your footer, maybe even nested inside of blog posts that you offer, as many places as possible that make sense. Remind your users that docs are available before they submit a support ticket. So if you have a page on your site that users can go to submit a question to your support team, it's a good idea to have a search form on that page so they can self-search and try to solve the problem first, or have a question that says, hey, did you know that we have docs? Did you search the docs to solve this problem first? You'd be surprised how many people just are like, I didn't even know that there are docs, and will hop over to that page. As you're onboarding or welcoming new users, so if somebody purchases your software, signs up for your free software, and you send them that welcome email that says, we're so glad you're here, here's your login, blah, blah, blah. Make sure that there's an invitation to check out the docs, especially the getting started area within that welcome email, or at least within that series. And when you are replying to reviews where people are asking for support help, users really, really like going to your review section to try and get support. That's a great place to use the docs also. Now, there are a few wrong ways, less delightful ways to use docs. So let's talk really quickly about some of the things that prevent your documentation and its process from being delightful. And there's quite a few. So I'll move through them pretty quickly because I know we're a little bit behind today. We want to avoid super duper technical jargon, which is what we talked about before. If you have to use a technical term, make sure that you are able to have some sort of link or a tooltip or something in the sidebar, like a glossary that allows people to then self-educate to learn what that word is. But too much tech talk can be really isolating and really confusing, especially if somebody is new to whatever this is. Obviously, we want to avoid using gendered language, ageist language, ableist language. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We want to avoid really long pages of documentation. This might be more useful as you get into more advanced topics, and then you can break things down with a table of contents or subheadings. But again, people want to skim, and pages are more easily findable when searched if you have smaller pages with less content, but those headings are super duper optimized. You want to avoid having people who write the docs from beginning to end be people who are massively experienced with the software. So what do I mean by that? Too much experience with whatever this tool or software is means that person cannot place themselves in the mindset of someone who doesn't know it anymore, or who doesn't know it to begin with, right? And I feel like a lot of people have had maybe teachers like in high school or middle school or even college who know their subject, their topic so well that they can't teach it anymore because they don't remember what it's like to not know. So if you are a software developer and you are writing your documentation, that's great, that's fine, wonderful, please do that. But give it to another writer or another person who is unfamiliar with the tool and make sure that it makes sense to them. A really good tactic for this is when you bring on new team members, having them read through the docs is a good way for them to learn the product, but also for them to point out mistakes or holes that you might have missed. And finally, probably my biggest pet peeve, and maybe a lot of yours as well, is when companies use docs in lieu of support. So how many times have you written into a live chat for help because you needed help setting something up, and they just link you to a doc? And that doc may or may not be helpful. Maybe it's a doc you've already read and you're still lost. Make sure that A, your support team fully understands the problem before recommending that somebody review a doc. And B, don't ever, ever just link to a documentation, but say, this is the problem you're experiencing. I understand this problem. Here's the answer. Here also is a doc that we've taken the time to write that fully explains the answer. That in and of itself, how to answer a good support ticket, I think could be a whole other talk that maybe I'll do one day. But always, always make sure that if you are using your docs in support, whether that's live chat or email support, that you are using it as supplementary material and not the pure answer. All right, so cool. I have about 5 minutes left. Let's review a handful of examples of docs that I've come across recently. And I'll point out to you what I like and dislike about them. I feel like a lot of this stuff is a little bit subjective, but a really good way to learn how to write delightful documentation is to read lots of delightful documentation, right? Like, how do we learn how to write well? By reading. How do we learn how to write good code? By looking at other people's code. So identifying where others fail and succeed with their doc libraries is a good way to learn. So let's of course start with the laravel.com/docs doc library. What I love about this one in particular, and I included a screenshot here, but you're more than welcome to head over to this link and look at it and click around if you want as well. What I love is the getting started section, super easy to find, front and center, and the topics get more and more advanced, like I was talking about before. When we look at that menu on the left-hand side, it's a very easy to follow sequence of events. What I would love to see more in these docs is more visual aids. And I know that this is very heavily, about code. And to be honest, my strong suit is not code, but it really helps me when I can see examples of the code, or when I see an example of what that code does, or how, when you change a piece of code, what the expected result should be. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I'd love for y'all to look at this on your own and determine what you like about these docs and what you dislike. The next one that I will look at, and of course I'm a little bit biased, are the docs at givewp.com, which can be found at givewp.com/documentation/core. So we had docs for our core plugin, and then we also had docs for all of the additional add-ons. Again, I helped write these, so I'm a little bit biased. But I always really loved, and this was in place before I arrived on this team. I love how there's a section at the top of each doc that's almost like an intro. So before you fully dive into that doc, that you're in the right place, that if you have a particular goal, this is where that goal is going to be suited. What I always kind of wanted more for these docs is more structure to the menus. As you can see from the screenshot, we have just long lists of links, and they're not nested in a way that I think is as searchable and as easy to use as I think they could be. So if I could go back and revisit these docs, I would refinagle how they are displayed so that they're a lot easier to skim. So the next one that I looked at is at ionicframework.com/docs. I really like these. I love, love, love the interactive visual assistance on this page. So you can see on the screenshot on the right-hand side, there is a kind of mock-up of a smartphone. And if you actually go to the site, you can click around on that phone, and it's like interactive, and it's really cool. So I really like how they pull you in with that interactive element. It's not just a list of information. What I dislike about these docs, I'm finding that there's not enough help. The ability to search in these docs, like the search bar, is very hard to see. It's not predominantly featured. It's kind of hard to find. It's all grayed out. And there's not really a ton of ability to be able to ask a question or find related docs very easily. It's just sort of like read the doc, end of doc, that's it. I like seeing next steps. I like seeing the ability to ask questions or find some similar docs so that I can continue with my user journey. And finally, probably the support docs page that has gotten the most traffic in the last 2 years is the Zoom support page, which is at support.zoom.us. I love this page. I love how prominent the search is. I love how organized visually the information is. We can skim very easily and find what we want. There's also a variety of media. So there are written docs, but there's also video docs. This one out of these four is definitely my favorite. I would not change a ton about the way that these docs are written, but I highly encourage you all to check these doc pages out. And the next time that you are trying to learn how to do something, really give the doc pages a solid look and figure out what they're doing well and where they can improve, and use that for your own docs. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much. This conference is absolutely amazing. I'm so honored to have been selected to be a speaker today. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything that I've said or anything docs or WordPress related, anything like that, you can find me on Twitter, Ali_Nimmons. It's like Simmons, but with an N instead of an S. And my website is bediaproductions.com.